The long-awaited release of the Kashtira cards has finally arrived, and with it comes a number of problems. So, first of all, this deck is unironically super fun. I absolutely love it. I think Arise Heart is one of the coolest looking cards. It feels amazing as a boss monster. It just feels like it sort of does everything. I absolutely love this card. Creates some really wacky interactions, which is pretty cool. And the deck itself functions pretty well. It has some one-card combos and such, so all in all, I think it's really pretty good. It's not perfect though, and I don't think it's going to dominate the game quite in the way that many people anticipate it's going to. Now, that could just be a case of, you know, early day hype and everyone trying to play counter cards because they know it's going to be super popular right now. But we were finding ourselves getting countered pretty hard, and in certain matchups maybe weren't as consistent as what we would have hoped to be. With the field spell being limited to 1, that basically means that Unicorn, which is your one-card starter, that is your one-card combo, is not as consistent as it otherwise would have been. Now, Planet Pathfinder does to an extent make up for that, but we don't have terraforming either. And Unicorn, I believe someone told me, is going to be limited in some capacity, or may be limited in the future. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't confirmed those sources yet. But yeah, ultimately the consistency of the deck just isn't quite there. And if Unicorn does find itself being limited, I don't know if it's going to or not, then it's going to really hurt the longevity of the deck. But either way, what we're going to talk about today is a deck profile here. Again, this isn't anything super fancy. This is just a bread and butter, powerful Kashtira deck list. We're not tacking on any unnecessary sort of tidbits. We're not throwing anything into the mix that's going to affect the function or purity of the deck just yet. We are, of course, going to play around with the Kashtira cards and play it in a variety of different situations and decks like Scarclaw, Punk, Sword Soul, all of those classic mixes we played before. We are going to be revisiting and updating. So stick around for that, obviously, but for today, we're just going to learn the basics. This is a pretty functional list. It is a strong list. It is a great list, but nobody in Master Duel, no YouTube channel, no Discord, no nothing, knows exactly how the best way to play Kashtira is yet. Apologies, I'm still getting over a cold. Nobody knows the best way of playing Kashtira, right? The cards are brand new. It doesn't matter who you've watched, whose videos you've watched. Nobody knows, right? Let's be real. It's brand new. And there is going to be innovation upon the strategy the more that people get their hands on it. So if you want to catch up and stay up to date with the updates and with the progress that we make with the deck, as well as potentially other people and members of our Discord who are all actively innovating upon the strategy as we speak and as you're watching this, then absolutely subscribe to catch more videos as they come out, and like this one if you enjoy watching it. And lastly, if you want to show even more support as a viewer, you want to help out the channel as much as you can, then the last thing you could do is, of course, join as a member using the join button or the link in the description. But what we're going to do in this video is a few replays showing how the deck works, talking about the basic combos, and we're going to do a deck profile at the end, talking about each of the cards, what they do, why they're here, what the ratios are, and that's going to wrap us up then for this video. So let's get into the gameplay. Alrighty, so getting into game 1 here, we're going to be looking at the Unicorn combo. Now, in my experience testing this, there's really 2 primary ways in which you can take it. We're going to play to the point where you make the decision, and I'm going to talk about both options. So this part of the combo remains the same no matter what, essentially. Now, ignore the fact that we have these in hand. We're going to play as if we don't have these in hand, but if you happen to open up with one of them or both of them, great. It just means that you're impervious to like Imperm or Ash or whatever, right? But you don't need to. Basically, we're just going to search for Theosis anyway, right? We already have Birth. So Theosis is one of the new cards. It's pretty fucking stupid. Basically, you can activate it, target a Kashtira on your field, and then summon another Kashtira from the deck, so long as it has a different attribute to the ones you control. So we're going to summon Fenrir, of course. Fenrir then is going to search our deck for another Kashtira monster, grabbing the Arise Heart because it can summon itself. And the Arise Heart specifically is important, and it's important for this exact reason. So this is the stage where you make the decision. The optimal end board is where you would take the 2 rank 7s, you would go into a Shangri-La, right? And then you would activate Raise Heart to boost this level up to 7, and then you can use just your Raise Heart to to go into the Kashtira Rise Heart, because this guy has the effect to where if the effect of Shangri-La has successfully resolved, which it will upon the activation of your Rise Heart's effect, then you can summon it using any one Kashtira monster. So you will have Shangri-La and you will have a Rise Heart, meaning during your opponent's turn you'll summon a Fenrir and everything. So you have a little bit more of a board, right? You'll have like an extra interruption, you'll have some follow-up with the Shangri-La. Pretty neat. Now the problem with that is, and this is where you need to sort of maybe pick whether or not you respect Nibiru or the likes of that or not. Of course, if you were to go down that path, that's going to take you above 5 summons. Whereas what I normally do, and again, this is just because I get nibbed a whole bunch on stream, so this could just be early days trauma, but I typically just boost up the Rise Heart early and then use all 3 monsters to raw exceed summon into the Rise Heart. And the reason that I do that instead is because that is summon number 4. We are not being hit with Nibiru. Now our end board does suffer, number 1, because we don't have the Shangri-La, and number 2, because we're also not going to use Birth to resurrect the Ogre that we banished, so Ogre's not going to search for the Big Bang Trap card, and so on and so forth. So we are sacrificing power on our end board, but we're impervious to Nibiru. So it literally just comes down to whether or not you respect Nibiru that much. I've been hit with it a lot over the last day and a half, right, since I've been back to Master Duel. It's my experience that a lot of people are playing it right now, so I have been kind of hands-off playing around it a little bit. Maybe if that Nibiru hype dies down, I'll go back to playing the full combo out, but for now, it is definitely something I want to make you aware of, that you can play under Nib, even if it does result in a couple of sacrifices. Whether or not it's worth it, though, is entirely up to you. That is your playstyle. We are playing against Pearly, yeah, and Pearly, basically... And the great thing about this is Pearly, of course, is one of the best decks in the game. They, like, instantly fold to a Rise Heart. It's hilarious. Because a Rise Heart, I should talk about this card while we're here. So long as this card's face up, any card that would be sent to the graveyard is instead banished. That means all your Pearly spell cards, that means your monsters. Whatever it is, whatever deck that you're playing against, Kashtira or Rise Heart absolutely crushes it. It also has the ability to detach 3 materials from itself to target a card in the field and banish it face down. That is a quick play effect that you can use just by detaching 3 materials. Now, that's an awful steep cost, but it can refill itself with materials because once per chain, whenever a card is banished, which is any time a card is used because he banishes everything, he gets to choose a banished card and equip it onto himself as material. So he's constantly refueling himself. You're going to end your turn normally with 5, 6, 7 materials. And you're able to banish a card actively, as well as being a Macrocosmos on leg. So this card is absolutely nuts. And the reason I'm happy to end on this, playing under Nibiru, is that the Shangri-La and the Fenrir are neat, and I think they're cool additions to have on your end board, but a Rise Heart is doing 90% of the work, right? So why would I put myself in danger of Nibiru when this one guy is still here, right? I'm still doing 90% of the work. The only thing we do miss is the trap card from the Ogre, but that's something else entirely. And yeah, our opponent just scoops to Ash and a Rise Heart because they can't play the game. It's as simple as that. So yeah, the deck is really not that complicated. The Unicorn combo, there really is only that one decision to make, whether or not you believe your opponent's going to be playing Nibiru. If my opponent activates a hand trap or 2, like mid-combo, if I'm able to play through those and get to that same point, normally I'll just do the Mavs and expect that they don't have Nibiru, because if they have less cards in hand, less likely to be playing it, blah blah blah. But if they still have a full hand, they haven't activated a single card right up until the point where Rise Heart is able to use its effect. At that stage, I'm sort of thinking, well, there's still a pretty decent chance if they're playing Nibiru that they still have it. So I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna go for the 4 summon combo instead. But again, I just wanted to show it off. I wanted to let you know it's an option, because I know a lot of YouTube videos and highlight reels and whatever are just going to be showing you balls to the wall summoning and not really taking a lot of strategy in the account. So I did want to let you guys know, even if you don't end up doing it, that it is a possibility that you can play under Nib. So let's get into game number 2. Alright, getting into game 2 here. This one is a little bit different. It is a mirror match though, so our opponent's going to banish a bunch of cards here for prosperity. We try to hit him with the Ash Blossom before he like grab, a Maxi before he can grab an Ash Blossom, but he already has one. So our Maxi does not in fact resolve. However, we are messing around with the thrust, and we do have a lightning storm here, so depending upon what we're playing against, we might still be able to put ourselves in a decent spot. But there you go, he's revealing his hand, and he's got the Kashtira unicorn. He's playing Cash. Gonna summon out the unicorn here. They're just going to go balls to the wall, regular combo, grabbing the Theosis. Theosis then targeting the unicorn, summoning out Fenrir. Fenrir then using its effect, gonna grab they go for the Kashtira Scareclaw, which is another thing that you can do. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. They already had Raise Heart in hand, so I guess that makes sense. So they go for Raise Heart here, gonna banish a card. They're showing off the other combo, right? Where you summon the Raise Heart after you use the Shangri-La. Banishing a card off a Raise Heart triggers the Shangri-La. They banished Big Bang, which is pretty fucking awesome because it actually allows them to take the Shangri-La, target it, and they get to summon one of the materials from it. So they get to resummon either their Fenrir or their unicorn. So that is even better. So they're going to bounce back Fenrir, summon out the Fenrir here. Then they're going to use just the Raise Heart to go into a Raise Heart because they've activated the effect of Shangri-La this turn. So now they have a Fenrir, Shangri-La, a Raise Heart, and of course they can put another monster on board in the form of a unicorn, in the form of whatever it is that they choose to have. Although unicorn realistically is the only viable option. They are, during the standby phase here, going to summon out the unicorn. Of course, we saw that coming. Me in phase 1, we're going to start with Lightning Storm. The back row probably isn't that threatening, but we might as well use it while we can. They're going to go for Cross-Out Designator here, as well as Call by the Grave. 2 cards that, again, would actually not have been that bad. Call by is going to banish the Maxi. Cross-Out's going to banish, what did they banish here? Planet Pathfinder, that's right. They banished Planet Pathfinder, which was really annoying. It means that they're playing into the mirror match, and that means that there's a dead card in our hand, and then our 1-card combo is completely gone. That's really damn annoying. But that does allow us to use Thrust. We're going to go for Thrust. We're going to grab Triple Tactics Talent. That's going to trigger a Rise Heart. They're going to grab materials. They're going to do whatever. We're going to go for Talent now. They're going to chain their Scareclaw Kashtira, which admittedly doesn't really do anything here. They're just going to summon it out to the field to look big and scurry, banishing the Theosis here. We're now going to use Tactics, grabbing the Erase Heart. We're going to use the Erase Heart here. It's going to equip a card on itself. They're going to trigger off both their Fenrir and their Unicorn's effects because the monster was activated. Now we're going to chain the Erase Heart to banish the Shangri-La. So that means essentially we've utilized all of our opponent's interruptions while getting rid of their Shangri-La and their Erase Heart before even going into our plays. We have Kashtira Raise Heart and we have Kashtira Burst, so that is a pretty decent set of cards here. We're going to go for Raise Heart, banishing the Unicorn from the deck. We're now going to activate Kashtira Burst. We're going to use it to resummon that banished Unicorn, and just like that, we're back in the game. We're going to use the Unicorn, search for Theosis, use Theosis, target Unicorn, summon out Fenrir. Fenrir then going to use its effect to search our deck for another Kashtira. We're going to grab the Ogre. Admittedly, maybe Scareclaw would have been better there, but I wasn't too worried about it. We're going to go Big Eye, detaching material, stealing the Fenrir, using the Fenrir to go into our own Erase Heart. Remember, the effect of Shangri-La was used this turn. Nowhere on this card does it say it has to be your Shangri-La. So because our opponent used theirs, that still satisfies the summoning conditions of Kashtira Erase Heart. So we're going to use our opponent's Fenrir, going into a Raise Heart here, into the battle phase. We're going to swing into the Scareclaw, taking it out. Going to use our Kashtira. We're going to steal his banished Kashtira. So what you ideally want to do is, if you're playing in the mirror match, your opponent can utilize their banished face-up Kashtiras, things like your Unicorns, your Rise Hearts, through the use of something like Birth or Preparations or whatever, depending on what they're playing. So ideally, with your Rise Heart's ability to steal banished cards as material, you want to be targeting their face-up Kashtira monsters first of all, or you want to be stealing their face-up useful cards. That way you're going to be minimizing their follow-up if they do just happen to draw into Birth or something, right? We're going to grab their Unicorn, stacking ourselves full of material here. We were going to go into Zeus, I believe, over the Big Eye, but it was banished earlier in the duel, yeah, by their Unicorn, so no Zeus for us, unfortunately. But they just top deck into Lava Golem, which is supremely annoying. But I guess it happens. That's another benefit of the Nibiru-proof combo that I showed in the last replay, is that you only have one monster on board, which means you're less likely to get hit with Lava Golem. It does make you more susceptible to Kaijus, kind of, but it means you can't get hit with Lava Golem, which is another big thing. We're going to go for Birth, though. It literally doesn't matter, because we still have Birth. We can just bring back Unicorn. We can do the whole combo all over again from scratch, and yeah, no, they've had enough. So there you go, a pretty decent back and forth match. They're showing off, they showed off the full sort of potential end board of Kashtira. We showed how to break it, and then we ended up winning the game. So it was a pretty good showing all in all, but not every game is quite as smooth as that. So let's get into one that maybe didn't go our way. Alrighty, getting into our next replay. Opponent's going to go for Maxi here in the draw phase. We're not going to allow that. We're going to go for the crossout designator here, nice and early here, stopping the Maxi from preventing our turn basically. And look at that, this is a pretty solid hand. Now, there are some consistency issues with Kashtira at the minute, as I'm sure a lot of people are going to be showing, and if you watch recent tournament gameplay, you're going to notice that Kashtira isn't really all that consistent, right? And that's a bit of a problem. In these games, we've been opening up fantastic hands, and I'm not gonna lie, when we were streaming the deck, we were absolutely slaying. But don't get me wrong, there are hands where you open up like Ogre and 4 spells, and you're like, ah, shit, what do you do? Luckily, we're not in that situation. We yet again have Theosis and Birth in hand, but it doesn't really matter because we're able to search for Theosis anyway. Theosis then targeting Unicorn, summoning the Fenrir. Fenrir then using its effect, gonna grab the Rise Heart here. Rise Heart, pretty straightforward stuff, gonna do the same thing, playing under the Nibiru combo here. Again, I know I'm sacrificing the ceiling here. I know I am. I'm constantly getting hit with Lava Golem. I'm constantly getting hit with Nibiru, and by playing it like this, I'm steering clear of those automatic losses, right? And that's what they are essentially. They're automatic losses, and it's really quite bad. So we're just gonna finish up like this. Keep it nice and simple, easy board. Let's go into main phase 1. Starting off with the Fenrir, we're going to use our Arise Heart. We're going to immediately banish that shit. I do not need them trying to force our Arise Heart into using its effect so they get to banish it for free. We're playing in against Punk, though. Very interesting here. They're going to go for the Wagon here, searching the field spell. Synchro summoning into Baron the Fleur. Going to use the Arise Heart here, of course, to grab back the Fenrir. Now they're going to go for Baron to pop the Arise Heart. Activating Foxy Toon in hand, they're going to go for Foxy Toon, summoning out the Xiamen here, and here we have people telling me that Punk is dead thanks to Arise Heart. I do not think so, good sir. We're going to go for the field spell, drawing a card, banishing the Foxy Toon to summon out the Ogre Dance. We're going to use our Ogre Dance and Xiamen to go into the Psychic and Punisher. Look at our opponent's life points. They have nothing left. They're going to boost their Psychic and Punisher up to 10k, and just like that, we are absolutely crushed by our own deck. That one was just to show people that Punk is not dead. Absolutely not. And we will be visiting Punk very shortly in the future. Although, small spoilers, I really don't think this new support is for Punk. But anyway, let's stay focused and let's get into the deck profile. Alright, so, one of the big things about the deck is that there's not like a ton of engine to play. So you do have quite a lot of flex room. So what we're going to be doing is removing those. And this is why I'm thinking maybe the pure Kashtira might not be the way forward. I definitely think there's enough holes in the engine to where you are going to be struggling slightly. We're going to talk about some of the basic hand traps and things here. So of course we have our triple Maxi, we've got our triple Ash Blossom. We've got... So here we're going to talk about this in just a second. This is a brand new card. So triple Maxi, triple Ash Blossom, triple Imperm, pretty standard stuff. Double Crossout and single Crossout, double Call By. A lot of people are dropping Call By because of Arise Heart. They're like, ah, well, what's the point in having it because my whole graveyard's going to be banished. Yeah, but this is still super useful turn 1, right? And that's sort of the whole point of the card. Like, not getting Ash Blossom, not getting Max Seed. on your initial setup. So I still think Call Out the Grave is almost mandatory. But yeah, no, I totally understand where people are coming from, at least. And then we also have a bunch of additional options here. You can see our a couple of one-ofs and stuff, and that is down to our new card, Triple Tactics Thrust. Triple Tactics Thrust essentially is like Triple Tactics Talent, and that when your opponent activates a monster effect during that turn, you get to grab a normal spell or trap card from your deck, and either, if your opponent controls a monster, add it to your hand, or if they don't, set it, but you can't use it that turn. So this card is absolutely amazing because they can grab super powerful board breakers. Talents, evenly matched. We were playing Lightning Storm as well as another target. Dark Ruler is a good target. It can also grab engine cards. It can grab Theosis. It can grab reinforcements. It can grab Pot of Prosperity. So this card is really fucking good. I really like this card, I'm not gonna lie. We are thrusting all over the place. But yes, we got the double thrust, and because we're playing double thrust, we're just playing like single tactics, single evenly. We really don't need to go overboard on those cards. So this is sort of your core Kashtira lineup in terms of your main deck at the minute. And we're going to talk about the Kashtira cards themselves first of all, and then we'll talk about some of the new cards. In fact, we'll talk about the new cards first. Let's keep it interesting. So of course we have Theosis. Theosis is one of the stupidest cards in this deck. It's super great in pure Kashtira, as well as some other versions of Kashtira that don't mind Exceed locking, but it's both the deck's biggest weapon and its biggest curse, because this is the single card that most inhibits the deck's ability to mix with other strategies, because it does Exceed lock you. But basically what it does is you target a Kashtira, special summon another Kashtira from the deck with a different attribute in defense, but it does Exceed lock you for the rest of the turn. If this card ends up getting banished, which can happen thanks to your Rise Heart, you can target a banished Kashtira card and add it back to your hand, which is an excellent way of recycling your Kashtira Big Bang, which we will get to in a minute. But this card, absolutely broken, but it does limit the deck's flexibility in terms of splicing him with other strategies, so you may not see this in certain mixes. So this is their field spell. This is the card they felt they had to limit to one, and I have to agree with them. I definitely feel like that was the correct play, because this card is pretty stupid. Basically, when it's activated, you get to grab a Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand, and the reason that's such a big deal is because one copy of Unicorn does everything, and that's the scary part. One Unicorn does everything. So they limited this to one preemptively so that they didn't have to limit Unicorn to one. But as far as I'm aware, I've been told they're also going to be limiting Unicorn, so we'll have to see how that works out. But yes, it also boosts your monsters by 100 attack and defense for each different attribute on the field, which will be usually a couple hundred, which is neat, but you know, not that big a deal. If Shangri-La on your field activates an effect, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. So that means your Shangri-La is no longer just locking up zones, it's also popping cards. But as far as I'm aware, it can only pop the card once, yeah. So I guess the pop once per turn, which makes Shangri-La a shitload better, right? This card is then absolutely phenomenal. It gives it an extra bit of disruption. Great. Makes Shangri-La even better. We then have, in terms of new cards, we have our two actual monsters, and we have our trap card. Let's talk about the trap first of all. So this card's pretty weird, right? I absolutely love this card, but it's very strange. Basically, if there's a Kashtira Exceed monster on the field, not necessarily your field, which does come up, you basically activate this, and both players are forced to banish cards until they only control one. Which is, again, another reason as to why I play the smaller combo to keep one monster. Basically, you just banish all the other monsters face down until they only control one. Then if this card gets banished, which will happen with your Rise Heart, or your Rise Heart, or your regular Rise Heart will also do this as part of your big combo. You get to target a Kashtira Exceed monster. You get to add one of its materials back to your hand, and then you get to immediately summon that monster. So if you have like a Shangri-La or an Rise Heart that has a Fenrir as material, you get to bounce Fenrir back to the hand, and then summon Fenrir back to the field as a new monster. So that's absolutely amazing, and this card can be recycled almost endlessly through your Rise Heart grabbing it back as material, detaching it. When it gets detached, that counts as being banished again because it goes to the banish pile, and it just continues to cycle its effect every single turn, which is pretty damn silly. So this card's nuts. And then the last of the new cards are the two new monsters. Now, they operate slightly differently to the rest of the Kashtira monsters, who all special summon themselves if you control no monsters. These instead will special summon themselves, and then you have to banish a Kashtira monster or a monster relevant to their secondary archetype from your hand or graveyard. So with Scarclaw Kashtira, you have to banish a Kashtira or a Scarclaw. With Tearlament's Kashtira, you banish a Tearlament or Kashtira, of course. Scarclaw Kashtira can attack while in defense, using its defense stat as its attack stat. So basically, it's super heavy samurai, and whenever a Kashtira or Scarclaw monster battles an opponent's monster, your opponent's monster's effects are negated. Pretty straightforward card. It's decent. It's a decent extender. So absolutely, I really like this card. The Tearlament's Kashtira is similar, so when you summon it, basically on summon you get to send the top 3 cards of either player's deck to the graveyard, and then when this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the grave. So it does the whole Tearlament's milling thing, but yeah, it's not really all that special. Basically, these guys just act as free level 7s, right? So if you get hit with an Imperm or an Ice Blossom or whatever, Kashtira, the additional 2 here, are basically just here to step in and fill in the blanks to make sure you can resolve your combo. And the rest is pretty much Kashtira as we know it. The only change is that we're playing Planet Pathfinder. So because the field spell is limited to 1, we need as many copies of it as we can possibly get, and the deck doesn't really rely very heavily upon its normal summon, so Planet Pathfinder usually does work out to be quite well, not only because it searches for your pressure planet, which then searches for Unicorn and does your whole combo, it also tributes itself as cost, which means your field is now empty, and you can summon your Kashtira monsters without interruption. So, pretty straightforward. Very, very nice card, of course. We have Kashtira. I'll talk about Rise Heart in a moment. Let's talk about the big 3. We have Unicorn, Fenrir, and Ogre. All of these monsters will special summon themselves out to the field if you control no monsters. All 3 of them have search effects. Fenrir searches a monster, Unicorn searches a spell, Ogre searches a trap. They all also have a disruption effect that activates if your opponent activates a monster effect. Fenrir will banish a face-up card. Unicorn will look at your opponent's extra deck and banish a card. Ogre will allow you to check the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and banish one of them. So they special summon for free, search for a card, and they disrupt your opponent to some extent. Pretty straightforward stuff. And they're all level 7s, of course, to work with the deck. They're all different attributes as well, which is worth bearing in mind because that does work alongside your Theosis. You need to bear in mind that Kashtira, Tearlaments, and Scarclaw Kashtiras are not unique attributes, meaning they're not always summonable off of Theosis depending upon what your target is. If your target's Unicorn, you can summon whenever you want, but let's say your target's Fenrir, well, you can't summon the Scarclaw, and vice versa. Which, again, doesn't really matter, but just so you know. And lastly, of course, is the Kashtira Rise Heart. If you control a Kashtira, you can special summon this guy straight from the hand, but it does exceed lock you, which in this particular version of the deck doesn't really matter. But again, it's going to be one of those things that inhibits a potential mix with a non-exceed based strategy. You can also, during the main phase, banish a card from the deck, a Kashtira card from the deck, to boost this card's level by 7, and banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. Pretty straightforward stuff. That effect in particular, of course, makes it a level 7, but it also triggers off the Shangrira because you have to banish cards from your opponent's deck face down. So that meets the additional summoning condition of a Rise Heart, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And the last main deck cards we haven't really talked about, of course, Reinforcements, search for Rise Heart, Pot of Prosperity, check the top. In fact, Pot of Prosperity, we're going to talk more about this when we talk about a Rise Heart, because this has some pretty fucking awesome implications with the Rise Heart in this particular deck, so we're going to talk about those. And lastly, of course, Kashtira Birth. You can normal summon level 7, so no tributes. Once per turn, special summon a Kashtira monster from your banished pile or graveyard. If your opponent activates a spell and you control a Kashtira, banish 3 cards from their graveyard face down. Straightforward card. We all know what this does. We all know what the basic Kashtira cards do. They've been around. I've played them a bunch on the channel, so we're all very familiar with those. Getting into the extra deck. So, let's talk about prosperity targets. Now, it's not very often you have prosperity targets in a deck, but in this we do, because there's some cards that we actually really want in our banish pile. Those cards in this case are Elder Entity Entis, Garura, Wings of Resonant Life, or the Infinite Track Goliath. So, essentially, the main one here, of course, is things like the Goliath or whatever. But by equipping these monsters onto your Arise Heart, you're putting yourself in a position where if your Arise Heart ever gets dealt with, then you're going to get additional advantage out of it, because you can banish Entis, Garura, and Infinite Track Goliath off of your Prosperity, and then Arise Heart can re-equip those cards to itself from the banish pile. Now that means if they deal with your Arise Heart, you're going to get to pop a card, you're going to get to draw a card, and Goliath does something slightly differently. If this is equipped to a... if this is equipped to an Exceed monster whose original type is Machine, like Arise Heart, then it's basically becomes indestructible by card effects, which is really good, of course. So Goliath is priority number 1, because it means that your Arise Heart can no longer just be destroyed by card effects, which is incredible. And that 3k defense makes that even more relevant, because it means that something like a Baron de Fleur can't really deal with you, if you're being honest, because its Negate isn't going to pop you, its Ignition effect isn't going to pop you, and it can't swing at you even if it wanted to destroy itself, because you've got 3k defense. So the Goliath really does make your Arise Heart significantly more difficult to deal with. The others are totally optional. If you don't have these cards, if you don't want to craft them, or maybe you just don't want to use them, don't worry about it. They're kind of mid. They're very mid. But we were just toying around with the idea, so these can be literally anything that you want. We have Big Eye to steal opponent's monsters. Dark Arm Dragon pops a bunch of cards, they're all just rank 7 Exceeds. We have Kashtira Shangrira, we're playing it at 2, you could play it at 3, a lot of people do, and you're probably right for doing that. I would maybe drop things like Garura to put this to 3 to be safe. Kashtira Shangrira, basically this card, during your standby phase, or your opponent's standby phase I should say, or during each standby phase, God, I'm not in the game at all today. During each standby phase, you get to special summon a Kashtira monster directly from the deck, which is very useful. And if a card is ever banished face down while this card is on the field, you get to target that opponent's zone and lock that zone up. That will of course also trigger off your field spell, things like that. So you get to lock up your opponent's zone, you get to special summon a Kashtira monsters for free, and lastly, if your opponent would go to destroy it, it can protect itself by detaching a material. So a very solid card overall. We're playing Double X Pearly Happiness. We're literally only playing this to deal with Makonko. There's no real reason to play it at 2. Initially, the reason for playing it at 2 was like, oh, we don't want to get it banished off of Unicorn. And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, if it's here to deal with Makonko, then it's not going to get banished by Unicorn. So we don't need to worry about that, right? So you only have to play one of it. So I didn't, whenever I was building the deck on stream, because we did build this deck live, I didn't really think too much into that, but yeah, so you don't actually need 2 of it. So you've got a free extra deck slot if you want to toy around with whatever. If you want to put Garura back in, you want to put anything else back in, go nuts. But basically this card is here exclusively to deal with Makonko, because Makonko's a pretty difficult deck to deal with otherwise. So basically during the battle phase, during your main phase, sorry, you can detach a material, negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn. And yeah, basically you're just turning off all their Makonko effects without targeting, without doing anything like that, so you can just swing at them and take them out. That's the idea. Super straightforward card. We got the triple Arise Heart. Not a lot of decks play triple of their extra deck boss monster, but Kashtira does. You can get away with 2. I don't think 3 is necessary, but you can go into 3. But I do really love this card. This card is insane. I've already talked about this card in a decent amount of detail during the replays, but it's just silliness. Being able to just steal banished cards, actively banish during your opponent's turn, just be a passive Macrocosmos. This card's pretty fucking insane. Absolutely. And as the Kashtira hype dies down, it's only going to get better. So right now, Arise Heart is going to be hit or miss because opponents are also going to be playing Kashtira because everyone's playing the new cards. But once that sort of dies down and people see the consistency issues and move back to their Dragon Link and back to their Pearly and back to whatever, Arise Heart is going to get more and more useful because it's going to counter those decks. Right now, it's not really countering much of anything because the only thing it's playing against, well, it's Kashtira, which doesn't really do it any favors. But again, this card is absolutely broken, and it will sort of rise and fall in usage over the next little while, because you know it's gonna fall in usage because people are gonna get over the deck. They're like, okay, I've had my fun with Kashtira, I'm moving on, and then because of that, they're going to move on to other decks, which are likely going to be susceptible to a Rise Heart, so they're going to start losing to that, and then they're going to look at it and think, oh, okay, that card's better than I remember it, I'm going to try it again, going to go back up, and then back down, and then back up, and blah, blah, blah. That's just how metas work. So this, right now, it's still really fucking good, don't get me wrong, but it's only going to get better as people move away from Kashtira to decks that are more susceptible to the Macrocosmos-like effect. I'm not gonna ramble much more. We've got Zeus here just because we can with the amount of Exceed monsters. Goliath I've already talked about, and Donner. Donner here is like exclusively to get rid of Nibiru tokens, to get rid of Kaijus, to get rid of all of that freaky stuff. So Donner is literally just because it's a link 2 that it'll basically destroy it, tribute itself as cost, right? I'm pretty sure you target a fair higher you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy both. So basically, it destroys itself and an opponent's card and empties up your field so you can summon out more Kashtiras. That's the idea. It also helps you get rid of monsters your opponent have given you, which would normally get in the way of your plays. But that's the whole deck, right? The deck really isn't all that complicated, and there are going to be a few different ways of playing it, as you can see on screen, and things that I'm still working on, things that I'm still tweaking. But this is generally the idea. Nobody has like super cracked the code yet, nor do I think they're going to. I think the pure Kashtira strategy really is that straightforward, and while it's pretty powerful, it's got a lot of competition right now, so we'll have to wait and see sort of how it develops. I do think it's going to be very strong. I don't know if it's going to take the cake as like top deck in the game, but fucking a Rise Heart is a goddamn problem. This card is so strong, so honestly, it might be able to carry the deck. Who knows? But anyways, that's pretty much all we need to talk about here today. If you want to catch more as we're bringing more out on this deck, we are going to be exploring Kashtira in a decent amount of detail in the future as well, doing different mixes and strategies and fun bits and challenges and whatever, as well as any other decks that you want to see covered. Again, it's not just a Kashtira channel, right? We cover everything. You want to see some Gishki, you want to see some Rescue Ace, absolutely subscribe, catch it as it's coming out, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.